Well, hello, this is Pastor Russ again, and it's Wednesday, so that must mean it's time for another hymn story, and a great one for you today. This story begins in 1885. A Swedish man by the name of Karl Boberg was walking home, and a thunderhead appeared on the horizon. Lightning flashed, thunderclaps shook the air, sending Boberg running for shelter. When the storm began to relent, he rushed home. He opened up his windows to let in the fresh air, and the vision of tranquility that greeted him stirred something deep in his soul. The sky had cleared, the birds sang in the distance, and he heard the resistant knell of church bells sounding. With the juxtaposition between the roaring thunderstorm and such a bucolic calm as background, Boberg sat down and wrote O Stor Gud, a poem that through a winding series of events would eventually become the hymn, How Great Thou Art. After being published in a local newspaper, an unknown Swede put O Stor Gud to the tune of a Swedish folk song whose name has been lost to history. In the late 1800s, several versions were published, but it wasn't until the early 1900s that O Stor Gud, which translates literally to Almighty God, hopped the Swedish border. In the first decade of the 20th century, the song was first translated into German. A handful of years later, a Russian version appeared, but the first English version wouldn't be penned until 1925. But this English iteration, translated by the Swedish-American Gustav Jonsson, is a far cry from the song that we know today. It took another quarter century, a British missionary, and a new translation before the song developed into its now recognizable form. In the early 1930s, Stuart K. Hine, an English missionary, first heard the Russian version of O Stor Gud while in the Ukraine. For years, he and his wife sang the song with locals before he finally sat down and translated it into English. Now, some of you might know that translation is really more art than science, and Hine took some liberties, more particularly with the title, which in 1949 he rechristened How Great Thou Art. Now, the story of How Great Thou Art might have ended right there in relative obscurity were it not for a British-American theologian traveling to India, a singing cowboy, and a popular American evangelist on a self-described crusade. When J. Edwin Orr, a British-American theologian and evangelist, traveled to India in 1954, music was the farthest thing on his mind. He was there to preach. But while he was there, he heard an English version of How Great Thou Art, sung by the Naja Choir from the state of Assam in northeastern India. He was so impressed by this song that he brought it back to America, and he had it performed at a conference for college students where he was speaking. Just coincidentally, in attendance at that fateful conference were the children of Tim Spencer, a singing cowboy and actor who had found fame singing in the group The Sons of the Pioneers, alongside Bob Nolan and Roy Rogers. At that time, Spencer owned Manna Music, which was a publisher of Christian music, and at that time, he quickly arranged to buy the rights to the song, and then he did what all good publishers do. He started pushing the song. As late as 1954, How Great Thou Art remained all but unknown in the United States, but with Manna Music's backing, the song eventually landed in the hands of George Beverly Shea, a famed soloist in Billy Graham's Traveling Crusade. Graham reportedly loved the song and quickly made it his crusade's signature song. Now, given Graham's reach, Shea all but introduced the song to the nation. He sang it live on radio before stadiums filled with thousands of people and during national televised events, like the 1957 Madison Square Garden Crusade, which ran for 16 weeks and was viewed by an estimated 96 million people. And then came Elvis. Now, though Shea and other popular artists like Tennessee Ernie Ford and Loretta Lynn recorded versions before him, the recordings by Elvis, his more restrained studio version in 1967, and the looser live version from 1974, both of which earned him Grammys, are generally considered to be the versions against that all others are compared. Now, that said, many people today think first of Carrie Underwood's chart-topping rendition from 2011. Now, regardless of your favorite recording, when we reflect on the various chance encounters and the serendipitous occurrences that occurred to birth How Great Thou Art and bring it to prominence, it's really hard not to be awed by the sheer improbability of it all. Fate, dumb luck, God's grace, call it whatever you want, the path from O Store Good to How Great Thou Art was nothing if not unlikely.